My name is Akiko Miyake Stoner. I am mixed race Japanese German. My mom is immigrated from Hiroshima, Japan. She's a second generation survivor of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And my dad is Pennsylvania Dutch German. So I've been in Fresno since 2010. What brought me here was my call to United Japanese Christian Church, where I've been serving as pastor since then.
So, what is your view on what peace is, and how have your experiences helped influence that?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I always come back to the Jewish idea of shalom, which is often defined as peace, but I've learned from some of my Jewish friends that it's actually more than peace, it's actually defined as wholeness. And so when we think about peace, it's about the wholeness of the whole person, the whole community, the whole country, the whole world. As we go out. And so as such, I think peace has to begin from within. If we're not at peace in ourselves, how can we work for justice or peace in the world? And I think, oftentimes we think about peace as the absence of war, but really, when we are peaceful beings, it really shows up in how we interact with one another, and how we respect one another, how we love one another. So that's kind of what I was thinking about in terms of peace. And then, yeah, you asked about kind of what informs my ideas of peace. So as I mentioned before, my mom was born and raised in Hiroshima, Japan. And so my grandfather was a kamikaze pilot in World War II. But I think like the war ended, I think it was like 2 or 3 days before he was able to fly his final mission. And so that was like a really heavy thing for him that he carried. He had like this shame that he didn't have the honor of dying for the emperor and dying for his country. And so it's like, I mean, that's like in a war context, right? But I think about how all kind of the brainwashing and the messages that he was receiving from the Japanese military really got ingrained in him. So I guess this is actually an example of anti-peace, which sheds light on peace, of course. So how he just carried all that like hate really that he learned, that he was brainwashed in, how he carried that, and then how that really colored, I think, the rest of his life, which made his relationship with my mother very tenuous at best, very difficult, for her to, come over to the enemy's country to marry one of the enemy. I think that's a story of the absence of peace, and so that's why I think peace is really, really informed by how we are in our hearts, and how peace starts from within us, and then kind of ripples out.
I'm Reverend Tim Kutzmark, and I serve as a minister here in Fresno of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno, which is a progressive, spiritual, religious community whose mission is to love inclusively, serve gratefully, grow spiritually, and work for justice. And when I think about peace, the first thing that comes to mind is I think it's a line from the Broadway musical Rent that says that true peace is not the absence of war, it's the presence of love. And I think peace it's a way of people and peoples living in a way that lives out the value of everyone and everything. And that's kind of sometimes my definition for love, like L period, O period, V period, E period, living out the value of everyone and everything. And it seems that there's something about societies, there's something unfortunately coded into people that idea of allowing everybody else and everything else to have value seems at times to be so hard. There's that sense of somebody somebody has to be on top, somebody has to be better than the other, and kind of a belief that there's not enough to go around, so that somebody, some society, some group kind of has to hoard that for themselves, be it land, be it water, be it, unfortunately people, so that you can enslave them. But there's that sense of there's not enough, and so we've got to take from other people so that we have enough. I've been really lucky to go to some places where peace is pretty remote possibility, or at least there's not a lot of peace to be found. I've spent time in Afghanistan, I spent time in Iraq, and I was in Iraq during a time when there were just lots of killings and bombings going on. And in talking to a lot of Iraqi young people that I met, there was this sense is they didn't want somebody else. They didn't want somebody else to be the enemy. So they didn't want to say, oh, you're an American, so you're somehow bad. Or if they were Sunni Muslim, they didn't want to say, oh, so if you're Shia Muslim, you're bad, and we want to shoot you or blow up a car bomb.
So my name is Lilia Della Cerda. I am a coordinator and director. I coordinate the LSAMP program at Fresno State, and I also direct the HCOP, the Health Careers Opportunity Program here at Fresno State. As far as my belief of what peace is, in summary, I think in grand scheme of things, it's really the freedom for people to have equal opportunity, and not fear persecution, and being able to pursue your dreams. And how I came to that belief as an immigrant myself, and my parents immigrating to this country with me as a young child and my sister. I think my parents were trying to pursue economic opportunity, freedom, with regards to being able to work in the field that they wanted to, and being able to build their economic status, if you will, and being able to also avoid some of the conflicts that happen sometimes in our home country, as far as being able to trust people in authority and police. So I think in general, peace is being able to trust your government, to be able to have equality between the genders, male and female, and being able to pursue your dreams with regards to economic freedom and your religious freedom.
Hi, my name is Paula Kanagawa, and I'm a member of the Fresno Buddhist Temple. Buddha, when he was enlightened, his teachings were the Four Noble Truths, and that there's suffering, there's a cause of suffering, there's the cessation of suffering, and then there's the path to the cessation, which is the Eightfold Noble Path. And in that Eightfold Noble Path, I think comes peace, and how we practice peace as human beings, respect of one another, the ethnicity, and understanding. It's the understanding with that respect that is so important, and giving yourself that chance to understand another person, another person's religion, another person's views, and just respecting it, because we are all so different. And I think the problem comes when we think that ours is the only way, and we know that, I say we know, but I think many people have difficulty accepting that. And so peace begins, of course, with oneself.
I am Zach Dara. and I'm the Executive Director of Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministries, which is a Christian nonprofit organization that has served the refugee community for 25 years here in Fresno. You know, peace is something that we talk a lot about here because the truth of the matter is that many of the people that we serve are here because of some type of break of peace in the countries where they are from, their country of origin. When I think about peace, for me as a Christian, peace is kind of built into who we are as a people of faith. Most Christians, no matter the denomination that you're part of, would say that peace has to do built around an idea of love and loving everyone, reconciliation between people, reconciliation between God and man as well. Peace is certainly more than just not having war and not having violence. Peace goes also connecting with the ideas of justice, where people are given equitable access to those things that allow them to live life as individuals and families. Peace really doesn't have any conditions. In the kingdom of God and in the Old Testament of the Bible, they talk about shalom. And shalom is the Hebrew word for peace, but it goes beyond just being nonviolence. It has to do with peace that kind of trickles down upon relationships between God and man and others. And so it's something that is overarching. It's more than a concept. It's a lifestyle in a way that people live amongst each other throughout the world. I think too, the only way to have peace is for people to willingly give up the power that they've either taken or it's been given. Because in a world with peace, power is amongst all of us equally.
My name is Sophomore, and Key is asking my wife and me to give our thoughts on peace. It came to me during the civil rights in the 60s when the blacks were standing up for justice. I was listening to the black leaders speaking, and as I listened carefully, I began to come up with a new paradigm. The old paradigm was like the poor people down here, the downtrodden, and the privileged people up here. And then, so back then, it'd be the blacks here and the whites up here. And that was a wrong paradigm. The paradigm is this way. Here are the people who are wealthy or privileged with rights that is more than what they should have. And then the poor people are the disadvantaged. The ideal is not for these people to be brought over here, but rather to come to this place where where a person is a real treated and seen as a human being as God created us, and for these people here also to come here and find themselves as real human beings and not better than those people, or these people thinking we're not as good as those people. But the ideal is for both groups to come together and to live as human beings. As long as the people are here and people are there, there'll always be fights and battles and no peace. But only place they can find peace is in the middle, to be real human beings.
My name is Marian Masada, and as I listen to Sob, I realize that peace is a process where it starts with the people. And you know, there are wonderful people in this world. There are good people in this world. I have experienced that in my own life. So I know that there are groups of people working for peace here and there all over the world, and there are groups of mothers who are against war, and there are um, just people, ordinary people, being neighborly and helping their neighbors, and I think that all of this will amount to will come to a climax, so to speak. Myself, my own experience of being in the camps uh, has has led me to share what has happened to us as Japanese Americans being in prison just because of how we looked, and that was no justification for putting us in the concentration camps. So things like this can happen if we are not alert to other people who are suffering, and so the by each of us doing a little bit adds up to a lot.
My name is Reza Nikumanish, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Islamic Cultural Center of Fresno.
What is your view on peace?
So my view of peace is not the absence of conflict, nor the idea that we are not at war with one another or that we hate one another even. I think my concept of peace is that we work to build relationships, we work to understand each other, we work to see each other as full human beings, as complete beings that have mind, body, and soul, and that mind, body, and soul needs to be nurtured with dignity. I think we need to look at each other as dignified human beings. And then when we understand that, when we start to build relationships with different folks from different communities and different ethnicities and racial groups and religions, when we start to understand each other as humans that are dignified, that we move towards a space where we find that it's our responsibility to stand up for each other, to be for each other, to ensure that none of our rights are being infringed upon, that our rights are protected and valued, and that we move forward as a people, as one, where our liberties are tied together and we understand that. And when we move in that direction, I think that then we start to commit this act or this verb called peace, something that is difficult to attain, but is a beautiful thing to move forward in.
How have your past experiences influenced how you view peace?
Absolutely. So since I believe that relationship building is the most important, that getting to know each other, getting to love each other, getting to accept one another is so important. My past experiences are my past relationships and people that I've got to come in contact with. So where I may have held certain misconceptions about a group of people or ideas or faith-based groups or anything, getting to know people on a one-to-one basis and getting to understand who they are and what drives them and what motivates them and why they think the way they think and why they love the way they love and why they move the way they move and why they act the way they do. I think that has driven me to be able to step back and say I need to relook at the way that I'm seeing different groups. And I need to understand that I need to work to love people, to accept people, to understand people, so that I too could become an agent of peace or a peacemaker. I think.
I'm Tricia Van Laar. I'm an assistant professor at Fresno State, and peace to me means a lot of different things. So I think in the world there are 7+ billion people, and every one of them is different in a lot of different ways. And sometimes those differences are really noticeable. Somebody's tall or short or has dark skin or light skin or is male or female. And sometimes those differences are not as noticeable, but they are still differences, and all of those differences are worthy of being treated with respect. And so one of the differences about me that may not be visible when you just look at me is that I am in a relationship with another woman. And historically, that is not something that people have treated with kindness and respect. And so, to me, being at peace means first I have to be at peace with myself. And I grew up in a family where that was not something to be at peace with. And so that was a big struggle to learn that I was okay with who I am. And once I was okay with who I am, I also think that peace is treating other people with respect. And so I have to look, especially with my students, those are the people I deal with the most. And sometimes I can see differences, and so I can see a student who might be, a minority student or whatever, but I don't know what their home life is like. I don't know their personal story. I don't know if they've dealt with, significant issues. And so I need to treat all students with kindness and respect, just like I would treat any person on the street with kindness and respect. And I think a lot of the problem that we have in this world where people fight and treat people poorly is just because of a lack of respect and a lack of knowledge. And so I think that to me, peace is understanding differences, and maybe understanding isn't the right word, so maybe not understanding in terms of like understanding exactly how I feel, but understanding that my feelings are valid, that I'm important as a person, just like everybody else is important as a person. And I think if everybody could just realize that we're all different, but we're all important, the world could just be a much more peaceful place.
My name is Norman Broadbent. I'm newly retired as a pastor in the United Church of Christ, most recently from First Congregational Church of Fresno, the Big Red Church.
What is your view on peace?
Peace is a relational term for me. It is about developing relationships with people, those that I'm unfamiliar with, those as well as those I'm familiar with, but establishing relationships in such a way as to be willing to step into the experience of someone who is different than myself, finding a way of creating a dialogue and exchange of experiences to locate and identify and to celebrate some of the things we hold in common, but also to be able to learn from one another as to why there are the distinctions that there are, and to learn to see those not as obstacles in our way, but as opportunities to expand cooperation, collaboration, understanding. I've done that in several different settings internationally, and I currently serve as a co-chair of the Interfaith Alliance of Central California, working with religious communities such as the Sikh, Muslim, Jewish, Latter-day Saints, Unitarian Universalists, Hindu, Buddhist, Catholic and Protestant, Native American, and some I'm sure I'm leaving out. But the whole point is creating relationship, and so as a pastor in the Christian tradition, I rely on an image that I learned when I was in training in seminary from a professor who said, if we take the phrase God is love, we can divide it into two sections. God is, God loves, and it's the essential statement of relationship, and that is my basis for understanding peace.